Alright, so continuing on. Alright, so you have like introverted intuition and introverted sensing together create, among others, which you will probably need buffs, like if you're looking at it from a video game standpoint, just to be able to handle being able to do both at once or to get the grasp, because it's more taxing or it will take like more development. Maybe not, but from my experience with doing it so far, that's what I believe. So introverted intuition being used at the same time as introverted sensing would be kind of like when you hear people talk about like the Akashic records. It's like looking in detail about a situation that hasn't happened yet. So like, you know, if you were gonna like make a, you know, a video game, it would probably be like an ability like someone like Doctor Strange would have, and ironically he's an ENTJ, and for an ENTJ the two functions that they actually have the strongest according to my system is introverted intuition and introverted sensing. So he'd have the most ability to kind of, you know, work with them, and you'll notice when he's looking at like the alternate futures, he even has like a hard time just with that. And it would kind of be like a, in a way, kind of like a manipulation of that, but not exactly. That's really mostly just NISC. Alright, with like the timeline. And also I want to mention with NISC, timeline bodily diagnosis. If you have, for instance, if you are schizophrenic, and you've had like some situation, for instance, like you've taken like too much of an amphetamine or something like that, and you're like you're hearing noises, like hearing things, and what I don't believe is really being taught, I really don't believe this information exactly the way I'm about to say it is out there. Okay, so when that happened, maybe like the higher self tone or something like that, but yeah, when that happened at a point in time, and there were certain criteria that were met to cause that abnormality that is still persisting. So like if you take the system of like, I forget exactly what it's called, but like Geek Psychology has talked about it, where it's like the internal family system or something like that, where you go in and you look at like a situation that's already happened and you like, you know, heal that past situation. So, you know, what you want to do is kind of this, you want to find the timeline and diagnose at what point in time that happened, and you want to zone in, you know, zoom in on what the criteria, the NI criteria of the situation really is, and go in and find the period of time where it occurred, and then you want to apply this balance to the overstimuli of like, it may be like you have too much SE and NE is the point of what I'm saying. Like, you know, if you go too far into perception, like seeing too much and acting on too many things, you may have to balance it with the other functions, and it may be more than one simultaneously. You know, and like an ability of any SE or something you may have gotten from an amphetamine, or like, yeah, an experience you had may have been like you know, becoming like really aware of everything going on around you. But it's like the ability, if you were to write it down, would be, which I do advise when you're learning about this, to try to visualize it the least amount of possible, again, unless you get like the meditations down. Even then, I advise like, do not try to visualize these. But okay, so try to, as much as you can, in a, you know, Virgo wordy way, like, you know, like writing it down, listing it out, you know, kind of brackets, you know, very, what would you call that? Template, you know, that boxes, you know, web, thought web, you know, type things, you know, like label it as much as you can and have it like branch out. And, you know, to cover the different criteria. So it would be kind of like if you had like shadow clones, but all of the shadow clones, like from Naruto, like, or Arnold Schwarzenegger from 6th Day or something like that, where there's just clones basically, but if all of the clones were like, all of them were each other. Or another example, like the, you know, Captain Jack Sparrow when he's on the boat at, you know, at World's End, and he sees like all the different versions of himself, like testing everything out. It's like, instead of it just being like each, or Limitless, each one of those people being their own person, it's like if you had a screen up, or maybe like one of those like Google imagery alterations where it's like in each corner, it's got like one of those kaleidoscope things, and it's, you know, multiple versions of what you're seeing all up at the same time. But it's like, it's all of them are you, instead of each one being its own thing, if you get what I mean. So, yeah, like, kind of, you know, like a beehive, but it doesn't have to be that many, it can just be 2. Or, you know, some multiple like that. Could even be a fraction, I would think. And yeah, it's, or even maybe the Matrix when there's all those TVs and you can see like what's happening on all the TVs at the same time. But it's like if the TVs weren't individualized, like they had a hive mind of they're all going at the same time. And, you know, that's the best way I know how to explain it. And so that would be like the ability that would come up there. And then, and also the reason why I'm calling this like reverse schizophrenia is because like schizophrenia is when you like lose control of these, like it gets out of your, this would be like you'd have super control and then you would meditate on these abilities and like grow them to be stronger. You know what I mean? Like schizophrenia, yeah, is when you don't have control over your perception or thoughts or whatever anymore. So anyway, then you have really the hardest one for me to define, and naturally it would be as an INTP, because it's the one that's, you know, my weakness in this area, is TI and FI as the same one. And before that, I also want to say, like with the fourth and fifth function, if you overcome those weaknesses, which are usually the weaknesses the MBTI focuses on the most, that's like the level 1 weaknesses. And when you overcome those, then you can advise the types that have those functions as their first and 8th function. And ironically, I want to note that the 10th house would be the house where you would like gain status and have the like kind of clout to give advice like that. So that's an interesting side note, or thing that I noticed. So anyway, so yeah, so TI and FI, the best way I could say that is like, what word is there when you're just talking about like an internal system of, you know, making a judgment? Like, so, like it's not TE, it's not FE to make, or any of the extroverted functions to give it a something to, you know, give it an identification. So thought, feeling, you know, where I guess it's kind of like, I picture like it's just this alchemy of an internal process between, you know, you kind of like systematizing something and like, you know, you having an emotion and then, you know, making a judgment about that emotion that you got. So I guess like I don't know, the picture for it is kind of like if there was a freeze frame of the alchemy, not like the action of it, but like what it implies. And which, granted, you could say that for combining any of them, but I think this is especially so for these two. And I also got kind of the idea of it being like steel or something, but that may have been influenced by someone saying that it was like a gray area. But yeah, so that, you know, that's where I'm at with that one. So so TE and FE, which would be, you know, like my kind of like level 1 weakness functions before it branches out into, you know, kind of the advanced skill tree that this is becoming. So it would be kind of like the motif, I guess, is kind of like in between like a man and machine type thing. Maybe like examples, you know, which I talked about this again with my ISTJ Capricorn rising friend, but he thought of the example as I was saying this of like the Borg, or like from Star Trek, or like I thought, you know, maybe like the Transformers, not quite cyborg or like androids, because that's still more on the TE or more like machine side. But yeah, kind of that idea where it's like which Transformers, you're like, well, that's totally machine, but it's this quality of being able to, you know, evaluate these emotions at the same time as you have like the data and statistics in front of you. Like it wouldn't just be like Jarvis where you have like the gear, because that would still be kind of just TE, the facts in front of you, but it'd be kind of the data and going with the feelings of the collective at the same time. Maybe ISTJs or INTJs in general would have a clearer picture of what this entails. So again, my ISTJ friend said it would be like a giant like chessboard kind of. So like, I don't know, take that as you will. So SE and E, NISI. Yeah, that's basically them. Let's see. So, of course, like, and again, like when you go too far into like combinations of these, then you're going to want to use the aspects that balance them in order to, you know, cure what may come about from them. And actually, I'm going to check my notes real fast to see. I know there's something else.